Welcome to Subhash's grammar class. Today we are going to study about a verb and its classifications. Verb, regular verbs, irregular verbs, like that strong verbs, weak verbs. Some verbs are called transitive verbs and some others intransitive. And you should have a clear idea about what is a regular noun and what is irregular, the difference between strong verb and weak verb, and like that a transitive verb and intransitive verb. Today we are going to study in detail about these different forms of verbs or these classifications of verbs. Okay, before starting with the classification, let me ask you a question. What is a verb? If somebody asks you to define verb, how will you define it? A word which denotes an action or a state. Once again, a word which denotes an action. It can be an action word or a word which denotes a state is called verb. So if somebody asks you to define, you should define it like this. What are these words? Of course, these are verbs. These are action words. And action words are called verbs. So these are examples of verbs. Look at the first row. Walk, call, open, work, clean, wash, believe. Look at the second row. Take, see, sit, catch, go, drive, and swim. You see, do you find anything common between these two classifications? You see, on the left side I wrote walk, on the right I wrote take, and the left call, right side see. There is a notable difference. Can anyone notice that difference? Okay, look at the first verb on the left side, walk. That verb becomes past by adding or suffixing ed, walked. Look at the second verb, called. Open, opened. Work, worked. Clean, cleaned. Wash, washed. Believe, by adding d, believed. So walked, called, opened, worked, cleaned, washed, believed, by suffixing ed or d. The verbs on the left side become past. Look at the verbs written on the right side. Take, took, see, saw, sit, sat, catch, caught, go, went, drive, drove, swim, swam. Look at the words on the right side once again. Take, its past form, took. See, saw. Sit, sat. Catch, caught. Go, went. Drive, drove. Swim, swam. Now let's move aside once again. Walk, walked. Call, called. Open, opened. Work, worked. Clean, cleaned. Wash, washed. Believe, believed. So there is a regular pattern. There is a regular method, that is suffix d or ed. So by suffixing d or ed, some verbs become past, or some verbs can be made past by adding or by suffixing d or ed. That is a regular process, that is a regular pattern. So such verbs are called regular verbs. Have you followed it? Such verbs are called regular verbs. Look at the verbs on the right side. They have their own ways, irregular ways to frame past forms. So the verbs on right side and the similar verbs are called irregular verbs. Irregular verbs. Take, took, see, saw, sit, sat, catch, caught, go, went, drive, drove, swim, swam. Irregular method. Irregular methods are adopted to become past. So such verbs are called irregular verbs, whereas the verbs written on the left side become past by suffixing d or ed. There we find a common method or a regular pattern. So the verbs on the left side and the similar verbs are called regular verbs. So you have got an idea about regular verbs and irregular verbs. I hope so. These regular verbs are also called weak verbs. So weak verbs are regular verbs. Got it? So these verbs, the verbs on the left side and the similar verbs are known by two terms. One, they are regular verbs. They are also known as weak verbs. And the verbs on the right side, they are irregular verbs. These irregular verbs are also known as strong verbs. So irregular verbs are known as strong verbs, whereas these regular verbs are known as weak verbs. So weak verb and regular verb. Weak verb and regular verb are one and the same. Strong verb and irregular verb are also one and the same. I hope all of you got it. Regular verbs, otherwise called weak verbs. Irregular verbs, strong verbs. Strong verbs. Regular verbs or weak verbs. Irregular verbs or strong verbs. Look at these regular verbs and their present, past and past participle forms. Example, work. Worked, worked. Past and past participle look the same. Look at the next one, hope. Hoped, hoped. By adding ed, we got past tense, and similarly by adding ed, we got the past participle form also. Look at the third one, ban. Banned, banned. Past and past participle look the same. Hear, heard, heard. Call, called, called. Believe, believed, believed. Wash, washed, washed. So in the case of regular verbs, past and participle forms look the same. Look at these irregular verbs, how they form their past and past participle forms. See, saw, seen. Stand, stood, stood. Fly, flew, past form and past participle flown. Bid, bid or bade, past participle bid or bidden. Build, built, built. Deal, dealt, dealt. Draw, drew, drawn. Bleed, bled, bled. Once again, see, saw, seen. Stand, stood, stood. Fly, flew, flown. Bid, past form, bid or bade, past participles. Bid or bidden. Build, built, built. Deal, dealt, dealt. Draw, drew, drawn. Bleed, bled, bled. So you might have noticed the difference in which regular verbs and irregular verbs take their past and past participle forms. I hope you got it. Shall we move on to the next one? The next division, transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. Now we are going to study these two forms in detail. Okay. Look at this sentence. She invited her friends. She invited her friends. Invited whom? Invited her friends. Invited whom? Invited her friends. Answer to whom? Now look at the second sentence. She sold her car. Sold what? Sold her car. So here we get answer to what? Sold what? Sold her car. So in the first sentence, invited whom? Invited her friends. In the second sentence, sold what? Sold is a verb. Sold what? Sold her car. Got it? Answer to what or whom is called object. Answer to what or whom is called object. If a verb has object, that verb is said to be used transitively. So in the first sentence, the verb invited as object. Her friends is the object. That means The verb invited is used transitively in the sentence. Look at the second sentence. She is sold. Sold what? Sold her car. So the verb sold gives answer to what? So the verb sold is used transitively. Why? Because it has object. Her car is the object. And since the verb has object, we can say that the verb is used transitively. So in both the sentences, invited and sold are the verbs, and both the verbs are used transitively. I hope you got it. Verbs which have object, transitive verbs. Look at the sentences. They fly kites. Fly what? Fly kites. So the verb fly has object in this sentence, so it is used transitively. Look at the second sentence. Birds fly. Fly is the verb. It has no object. Fly what? Fly whom? No answer. So the verb fly is used intransitively. So the very same verb is used transitively and intransitively. In the first sentence, it is used as a transitive verb, whereas in the second, intransitive. They are playing. They are playing what? They are playing cricket. So here there is object. So the verb is used transitively. They are playing. They are playing. They are playing what? No answer. They are playing whom? No answer. So this verb has no object. So the verb is used intransitively. She speaks. She speaks what? She speaks German. Answer. Yes, we get answer to what? So the verb is used transitively. She speaks well. She speaks what? No answer. She speaks whom? No answer. So the verb speaks as no object in this sentence. So in this sentence, the verb speaks is used intransitively. The sun rises in the east. The sun rises what or whom? No answer. The sun rises where? In the east. But we know answer to where is not object. So in this sentence, the verb rises as no object. So it is used intransitively. She came in the morning. She came. Came is the verb. Came when? In the morning. But we know that answer to when is not object. So the verb is used intransitively. I hope you got it. All you have to know is whether a verb has object or not. And the best way to find out object is by putting the question words such as what or whom towards the end of a verb. And if we get answer to that, then we can say that the verb has object. And if the verb has object, we can say the verb is used transitively, otherwise intransitive. Look at the first sentence. He wrote a short story. Wrote is the verb. Wrote what? Wrote a short story. So the verb gives answer to the question what. So the verb is used transitively. Children collect shells. Collect what? Shells. So the verb has object used transitively. She drives what? She drives a bus. So the verb drives answers to the question what. So it is used transitively. They returned by evening. They returned when? They returned when? Answer to when is not object. So the verb is used intransitively here. He teaches. He teaches what? English grammar. What? English grammar. Answer to what? So it's used transitively. She sells what? She sells the fruits. Sells. The verb is used transitively. She always sings. Sings how? Loudly. Answer to how is not object. So here in this sentence, the verb is used intransitively. So today we have studied three classifications: regular, irregular, then strong verbs and weak verbs, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. So in the next class, we shall study some other divisions or classifications of verbs. Till then, bye. Don't forget to subscribe and also press the bell button. See you. Take care.